What's that? Hello, beautiful people. This is the Mendo Money Mindset Show. I am your humble host, Raymond Hebel. I have been a full-time realtor for the past 7 years. I've been born and raised in the hills of rural Northern California. And I am a self-improvement enthusiast. You are listening to KLLG 97.9, Willett's Hometown Radio. Hope you're doing amazing well on this beautiful sunny morning. Hopefully you're hearing this in the car, in the radio, at your home, or even online. I hope you're doing well. This is going to be a fun show. We're recording this in July, a little bit later than I would hope in the month, but we're still going to give you amazing data, information, and all of the goodies in between. If you've never heard the show, this is where we talk about 3 segments over about a 30 to 45 minute period. My intention is to inform, educate, or entertain. I want you to come away with this asking yourself the hard questions in life and maybe some tips and tricks on how to move forward with your ambitions, loves, passions, interests, and then also how to inform the data, the trends, the graphics, the stats, the summaries on the real estate market so you can make the most informed decision possible. We're going to share with you first the Mendocino County Real Estate Report. We build this out every single month. We've been doing this for the last 5 years, every single month. And the reason we first started this was during COVID. I had gotten a call, and it was from someone with the Rotary Club in town. And they said, hey, we'd love for you to maybe look up some information. And COVID's happening right now. Everyone's locked down. No one knows what is happening. We would love certainty. We want to know where the market is. What are the numbers? And at that moment, I said, okay, let me think about it. And we eventually started what we now call the Real Estate Report. We do one for Mendocino County, we do one for Lake County, and we even do one now for Sonoma County. And I guess people like it because they have asked us for this. They've been given this every single month for the past 5 years. And it's one of the things that we can do to provide value. If you've had thoughts of buying or selling a home, this is great. This is for you. Even if you've never thought about the real estate market before, having peripheral information on what the market is doing at large is going to be what we can lean on to say, hey, I remember that guy on the radio telling me something about the market. Maybe now I know some questions to ask because he's armed me with some of the terms that I can now think about. Days on market, price per square foot, months of inventory, all of that good stuff. So that's the real estate portion. Today is going to be a bit different. We typically talk about personal finances, how we can do some sort of strategy. But what I actually want to do is jump into the weeds and give you some juicy tactical information when it comes to productivity. Yes, I'm going to give you a productivity system. If you're a nerd like I am, you're going to love this information. If you don't want to hear it whatsoever, still listen, because I think you are going to get some takeaways. And the risk is you don't hear what I have to say about productivity, and then you live the same 6 months over and over and over. And I don't know about you, but if I don't have progress in my life, I'm not feeling too good. And then finally, we talk about mindset. Yes, that's a productivity portion, or that's where we should do it. But I have a couple of stories that I'm going to share with you today that'll bleed into our time, but I think you're going to get a lot out of. First, let me open the show with the quote of the show. This is a quote that I find encapsulates what we're about to talk about, or something that's jumped out to me that has nothing to do with the show. This month, the quote is, "We're all just walking each other towards home," by Ram Dass. And this was the title of his book, which actually ended up talking about end of life and loving. We're all just walking each other home. All right, with that said, let's jump into the real estate report for Mendocino County. If you are like me and you're a visual learner, I have all the graphs, we have all the pretty pictures. Email me, mendomoneymindset@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to send you a free copy as a gift from me to you so you can see exactly what's going on. The first stat graph that I think is important to you is what we call the for sale, pending, and sold metric. For sale active inventory, which is the amount of for sale signs up in the front lawn for Mendocino County, is currently sitting at 382 homes when we pulled this report, which is a 11% decrease year over year. Sold homes have gone up to 59 homes for the month of June. This is all of June's data, which is a 11.3% increase year over year. And finally, we have pending homes. Pending homes are escrows. Those are the handshakes between buyer and seller that says, yes, we agree, and that process has been started. Currently at 61 properties in escrow, which is a 27.1% increase year over year. So just to recap on that, we have less homes on the market than we did last year. More of them have sold, and more of them are in escrow. Interesting indicators. Let's keep going. Okay, next we have price per square foot. Price per square foot, or average sold price per square foot. If we took all of the homes that sold for the month of June, we added up all of the purchase price dollars, we added up all of the square footages, and then we divided the whole kit and caboodle, you will get your average price per square foot. This is a great way for me to share with you how is the health of the market in reflection to price. Currently hovering around $371 a square foot. That is a whopping 2.1% decrease year over year. Next, we have days on market. So days on market is how long it takes us to put the for sale sign in the front yard to changing keys and giving them to the buyer. That typically in past has ranged anywhere between 3 or even 4 months, 120 days in the larger, more softer markets for sellers, more of a buyer's market. That has been going down in reflection with the summer season. We currently see that at about 78 days average days on market, which is a 2.6 marginal increase year over year, but a 3.7% decrease from last month. Next, we have average active price and average sold price. So how are we doing when it comes to seller expectation? What is seller confidence? And then what are the buyers actually closing for? We're currently seeing there's a marginal decrease, 0.5% decrease of active prices. So they went down a smidge. And then average sold prices are also down marginally, 1.2%. Finally, we have months of inventory. Now, months of inventory, as I've explained in the past, but if you're new here, months of inventory is, the good metaphor I like to say is, okay, we have 100 homes on the market. We close the lid, which means no more homes can be put on the market. How many months would it take for those homes to be sold? That determines two things. That determines first how many homes we have on the market, and then how fast are those homes selling. So with this one metric, we can see exactly what's going on. What's the health, right? So currently, Mendocino County is 6.5 months of inventory, which was down 26% month over month, and it is down 19.8% year over year. Now, mortgage rates. Everyone's interested. Always talk to your lender. These are the rates we pulled up at the time of the report. Your average 30-year fixed is mid 6.5%. 6.4, 6.7. If you go down to a 15-year fixed loan, you can get mid to high fives, 5.8, 5.7, somewhere in that range. That's what we are currently seeing. Now, what does this mean for sellers? What does this mean for buyers? We we had a conversation recently with a client, and she said, "Oh yeah, we liked your report. It was good marketing, but at the bottom, when we write our looking ahead, what do we think is going to happen? It seemed very salesy. Like you didn't tell us not to sell or not to buy." And I thought about that for a minute, and I thought, am I being salesy? Is there a way we're not wording this properly? But then I thought about it, and what I came to the conclusion is we write on our reports, if you're planning to buy or sell, you are going to do it anyways, regardless of whether you read our report or not. The best thing we can do is help guide you through the nuance, and so you can prepare the best as possible. Think of it like this. You need to cross the Pacific, the Arctic. You need to do it anyways. We are just helping you guide around the icebergs so you can successfully get there. So, for sellers, as you can tell, numbers are finally tilted in the seller's favor. We've had a pending homes jump along with solds increasing and active inventory on the decrease. However, price per square foot and average sold price have been down marginally. Now, what does this mean for me if I'm selling my home? This means I have a higher likelihood of selling my home than I did last year. I have less days on market. I have lower competition or other inventory I'm fighting against. And I have more recorded sales that have sold. However, we know the prices have been affected. Interest rates have been on the rise. Rural acreage for Mendocino County has been on the decline. We need to price accordingly. The hardest conversation I'm having with clients right now that are planning to sell is this is not 2021. The price needs to be reflected with recent comps. And yes, we need to anticipate at least one price reduction if we don't hit the market correctly. And sometimes the price that I'm recommending to these clients, we have to metaphorically hold their hand and say, I'm so sorry to burst your bubble. I know this was your retirement. I know this home you invested for 20 years. You loved this home. And I have to tell you, I have to be the bearer of bad news that says your home isn't worth what you think it is. It might not be worth what you need it to be worth. And armed with this information, you have to choose what to do next. I will guide you. I will help you. If you decide to keep it off the market and keep it for another 5 years, I'll help you do that. If you decide to sell because now is the right time, I'll help you navigate the icebergs. So, find someone, whether it's me or someone else, that's done this before that you can rely on to help you with that path. For buyers, what does this look like for buyers? Now, historically, we still have more inventory than we've usually had in years prior. We still have higher days on market than we've had prior. And so this is still a great opportunity if you're already in the market, if you've already decided I need to buy something in Willits or Mendocino County. This is the time to still go to those homes that have been on the market. Maybe they're past that average days on market. They've been on for a year, things like that, and make offers that make sense for you. What I will say is it's time to go back to your lenders, double check your credit score, double check that you're still pre-approved for the same amount, but also talk with your insurance agents. Now it's time to talk with those insurance agents and make sure we're getting quotes for the properties we're interested in before we write the offers. Most insurance agents, they can get a quote within 1 or 2 days on these properties. If you see a home that's interesting that you love, please feel free to get a quote within that time span. Depending on your strategy and the team you're working with, I have no problem calling insurance agents first before writing offers. Because the last thing I want you to have is a home that you love in escrow. You spent 2 weeks doing all the inspections, paying for all the inspections, and then we find out that our premium is going to be $6,000 a year, and we can't pay that. What's your takeaway? I want to hear it from you. Do you want to buy or sell in Mendocino County? Do you think now is a bad time? We've zoomed in according to the data, because I'm a very information data driven person. This is how I can make good decisions with good information. But zoom out. How do you feel? The Iran wars, the politics of the world, the global changing in that conversation. How are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed about it? Or are you charging forward? Next, I want to talk about is productivity. I recently came across this person, Justin Sung, and he seems to be a wonderful productivity hacking person. Is popular on YouTube. We'll go over a video that he talked about. But there was a couple of takeaways that I took away from this that I am going to start implementing, that I wanted to share with you. I thought it was so important to share this information with you that I said, you know what, let's get it to the masses. It seems proven. I've done a number of these items on here, especially part 4. The last part is probably arguably one of the best and most valuable parts. So keep listening. This is the productivity system he uses. Now, first of all, what is productivity? Right? When you hear the word, what do you think? There's 2 definitions I like for productivity. Let me go ahead and go to Spot. I brought my journal today because I wrote it down. So, productivity definition number 1 is a numbered amount of output per unit of time. A numbered amount of output per unit of time. If you own a restaurant, how many people can you seat within an hour? Or how can you do upsells or things like that? If you are a customer service rep, how many calls can you take? I used to be a banker. How many clients can I help coming up to make their deposits within an hour? The more you can do in that hour, that's defined as productivity. Now, I like that because it does give us an equation for how do we measure productivity. Because sometimes, and before, I used to have a vague notion of productivity, especially after the whole productivity thing on the internet. Think about 10 years ago, 5 years ago now. There's a big wave of productivity, and everyone was saying, you got to be productive. You got to do your red light treatment. You have to eat your food. You have to get, your 5 hours of sleep, and then you go hard. But as I've grown older and maybe a little wiser, hopefully, I've realized that productivity in its basic sense is just how can we do things to get a certain outcome. The definition number 2 for productivity from Justin is productivity is the progress towards a certain goal. He defines productivity as the definition of progress. How can I incrementally move my chip across the table so I can get to the other side? Because that's my goal. That's what I want. How can I move closer to earning $100,000 a year? How can I move closer towards paying off my debt? How can I move closer towards buying my first home? How can I move closer towards being more present with my children? How can I move closer to finding a spouse this year? All of those goals we have. Productivity is the act of moving our stats forward closer and closer to that goal. What do you think? Does that make sense to you? I know when I first had these 2, they're kind of conflicting, and I said, I'm not too sure. But let's sit down with it. Let's take those 2, let's use them. Let's suspend our disbelief for a moment, as the famous spiritual teacher Wayne Dyer would say. And that is number 1. Part 1 is defining productivity. We know it's a certain amount of output per unit of time. Okay. And then we know it's some sort of progress made to a goal. So how do we do this? Let's think. Let's implement this, right? If you and I are sitting at the coffee shop and we're running with the right piece of paper, this is what we're going to do. What is the goal? Right? For me this year, it's to have a sustainable and profitable business with good systems and good teams. Okay, good. That's a goal. I love that. Another goal of mine this year is to be a present father and an intentional spouse or partner. How can I be intentional? How can I be present? And how can I set my life up in such a way where I'm not constantly fighting? I have systems that make it easy for me to be present, right? I turn my phone off after a certain period of time in the evening so I can be present. I have certain morning routines when I'm dropping my son off at school because I can be present. How can I build my life in such a way? But my goal is present, active father, good partner. And then the third one I have, which I encourage you to actually write down, because sometimes we take it for granted, and this is not a priority. And I have fallen prey to the same thing of not focusing on this. My third goal is maintaining and rest, both spiritually and physically. How can I rest my body well? How can I get good sleep throughout the night? How can I maintenance the body well? How can I eat good foods? Have good breathing, getting air into my lungs? How can I expose myself to sunshine? How can I move this body in such a way where it builds me? And then spiritually, how can I have spiritual rest? We came across, we're going, me and the assistant, we're going to be entering a busy season between all the projects we have, everything going on. And we agreed that we will work overtime. We will absolutely work overtime if needed. But we also are not going to kill ourselves and burn ourselves out. And so this, 6 days working, 1 day of rest ratio seems to be the sweet spot for those high activity seasons. So we're going to intentionally make sure we're still resting, right? And then maintaining and resting the body and the mind spiritually. Jotting all of my thoughts, my concerns on paper, that helps take all the worries that keeps me awake at night, puts them down on somewhere, and allows me to go, okay, I can rest now. So that's my goal. What's your goals for this year? Is it some sort of earning capacity? Is it some sort of debt payoff? Is it some sort of intentional family time? Is it some sort of moving to location or acquiring of thing? I'm going to buy the new car, buy the new house. I'm going to move to Europe. What is that goal for you? Part 2 of this equation is flow sync or flow matching. Now, what do I mean by this? You and I can both probably look at our schedules together, and we can see in a whole day, and you have an x-axis and a y-axis. We're looking at a pretty graph in front of us that's blank. You and I are going to fill this in together. We go through, and productivity is going on the horizontal or the vertical side, and then we have time going on the horizontal. So productivity and time. Now, as the day moves on, our line fluctuates as we get less productive. Maybe in that afternoon, that 2 to 3 p.m., maybe we have another coffee, then our energy spikes again. Maybe we take a nap. Maybe the mornings we're really productive. We have high productivity. Maybe it's very low because we're a night owl and we stay up late. So I want you to chart out on your typical day what your productivity looks like. When are you the most energized, refreshed, and able to take on complicated tasks? I'm thinking about this like a bank account. You have so many credits or dollars in your bank account in a given day, and at the end of every day it resets. How are you best spending those? This is also called decision fatigue. As you go throughout your day, the more and more decisions you make, you tend to have a fatigue. You're basically spending up that amount of energy. So I want you to chart out when you have the highest energy, and what does that look like, and when you have the lowest energy. For me, I'm an early bird. I love waking up at 4, drinking my cup of coffee, I do my journaling. That's when I'm the most mentally refreshed. I can jump into some of these big, hairy projects I'm working on, and I can get that done. Now, between 6 and 8, I'm usually working with the boy. We're getting ready for school, now it's summer vacation. So we're messing around of some sort, 8 to probably 11. That's another good high energy time. After 11, it tends to get a bit less. I'm burnt, I'm hungry. I'm usually drinking a decaf cup of coffee. And that'll get me back up between that 12 to 1 and probably to 3. After 3, I tend not to be too functional. After 3, I'm eating dinner a little bit and hanging out with my family, and that's it. So now that we have that written down, how do we use this? How do we actually use this in a way that can be applied to our life? Here's the trick. So we now have our goals. We know what those are. We now have our flow. We're now going to break down those goals into a weekly. What's a good weekly activity I can do for our goals that moves me forward? Being intentional with my son as a goal can be 20 minutes a day of unguided play. He just tells me what to do. Dad, let's go and play zombie tag with our Nerf guns. Okay, handsome, absolutely, let's do it. Dad, let's get under the covers and pretend that there's a big earthquake. We just had that earthquake a couple weeks ago. Okay, handsome, let's do it. That's how I can measure progress as an intentional dad. How can I measure progress in my business? Well, we can make sure we ask for X amount of appointments a week, and we can go on those appointments. That's a very defined, clear, cut and dry way I can measure that in a weekly basis. Okay, so I got those, right? Intentional dad, building a business. How do we actually use it in flow charting? What we're going to do is we're going to take those activities and match them with the necessary times in the day that we should be doing those. Here's the example. Here's what I do in my real life. During the mornings, between 8:30 and 11:30, that's a high activity time for me. I am making my calls, setting appointments, and talking with clients. That's when I am most active. I'm ready to go. I'm sharp, having good conversations. So I've matched up the activity with the flow and energy during that time of day. After 5 o'clock, I am reading. I am sorting through emails. I'm doing basic admin task stuff that doesn't require a lot of mental energy. You see how I'm working this? So I'm matching the amount of energy I have to the task and what the task is requiring of me. Finally, part 3 is how do we do what's called scripted actions? I like to call this if-then statements. This is objections. This is where we say, okay, perfect. Here's the goals I'm going to have for the day. Here's the times I'm going to do these goals. I've actually put it in my calendar, not just thought about it, but written it down or put it in my calendar. But now, I know I'm a human being. I know life happens. There's going to be a million things that get in my way between what I want to accomplish and where I'm starting right now. What should I do? Should I just pray and hope it all works out? Or should I actually intentionally plan for these hurdles? Here's what I'm going to offer you to do. It's called scripted actions. I'm going to just call this objections. You're just going to mentally check out and write down a list of objections or possible risks or things that you just anticipate going wrong. I anticipate to go to the gym at 6 p.m. every day and work out. What happens if I get home late from work? What happens if I need to eat dinner before I go to the gym and I don't have dinner set up, so I need to cook dinner? Let's say I'm an intentional dad, 20 minutes of play. Let's say I am intentionally wiped out and I just don't feel like running around with my son. How am I going to get over that? So here's what I want you to do. I've been doing this in my life. I've loved it so far. It's a great mental exercise. You're going to write a series of if-then statements. If, insert problem. If I am late from work and I have not made dinner yet, then insert solution. Then I will order takeout, get something on the way to gym, or I will eat after I go to the gym. So for each goal you now have a weekly check mark, an activity that you can do to get closer to that goal. And now we've matched it to the amount of energy we have per a certain time of day. We've put that in our calendars. And then we've said, you know what? If life happens, I get in trouble over something, I forget to do something, something gets in the way, I'm going to have a series of solutions already baked in that I am already using in my tool pouch if these things occur. So you get home, it's Wednesday, you got home late from work, it's 6:30, you say, oh my gosh, I still need to eat. You said, no, I've already worked this out. I'm going to go pick up some food real quick in the car. I'm going to go to the gym real quick. I'm going to get home before 9. Maybe I've adjusted my workout schedule so I can do a quick 30-minute workout instead of an hour and a half. Right? Do you see how just going through this mental exercise can save us so much on the back end? Finally, for part 4, we're going to build an action architecture. So what does that mean? You're going to do I call it a weekly reset. Weekly planning, this is going to be awesome. It's well worth it. Try this one time. See if you like it. Watch how it changes your life. You're going to write down your goals. I suggest 2 to 3. No more than 3, because then we start diluting the amount of focus. Next, I'm going to write down when I am the most productive in the days and when I'm not. Get that chart. Then I'm going to go through a series of if-thens. For each goal I have, I'm going to list down 1 to 2 problems I'm anticipating each of those having as I go through the week, and life is life, and we're human beings. I am then going to write down a series of solutions for each of those problems. Then from there, I'm going to build this into my calendar. I'm going to have this all set up, and I'm going to have my architecture. I'm going to have my whole week. What's going to happen, my problems, how I'm going to match my energy, and the things I want to accomplish. That's my architecture. One final tip, here's a bonus for you. He talks about, this is Justin again. If you want to see this video, by the way, it's called Productivity is Hard Until You Build Systems Like This. ... The final thing that we kind of use as cherry on top is something called cues. So how can we set up our environment in such a way where the wanted and necessary action becomes obvious and easy to do, and the action that distracts us or gets us away from our goals is hard to find and hard to do? Think of this like using the workout analogy again. If you work out in the morning, you put on your gym clothes the night of. So that way they're nice and warm. You don't have to fight with yourself to put on cold clothes. Or there was this one time a gentleman was having troubles riding his elliptical little stationary bike in the house. He's like, I don't really want to, and so he's trying to think how he can incentivize himself to do this. So he puts like a little iPad on the thing, and he gets it in such a way, he like takes out the battery where it's hooked up to this little e-bike, and as he pedals, it turns on. And what does he have on that iPad? He has his favorite show on Netflix. So he has to ride his bike, turn the wheels, get the power going so he can watch his favorite Netflix show. And from there, it became easy. He loved doing it. Another thing you can do, another workout analogy, put the pull-up bar in the hallway. Every time you walk to and through a certain room, it's just there. If it's obvious and easy to do, you'll do more of it. Same thing with getting your foods. The foods right. If you're going on a diet, it's much easier to not have the Snickers, not have the Oreos in the fridge. I don't even know if you keep them in the fridge. But it's much easier if we just get all the food out. If we just put apples where they're obvious and easy to eat, we will eat more apples. Same thing with business and productivity. I have my desk set up in such a way where it's easy and obvious for me to make calls. It's hard for me to goof off. If you want to maintenance and rest, as we talked about before, one of my major goals, how can we make sure that we don't have our phones on Sunday afternoon or when we get home from work? That's an easy and obvious, right? We're either eliminating things we don't want or we're incentivizing things we want more of. And those are the cues. I want you to think in a series of environments and cues as you start refining the system. So we'll go over this one more time. Part 1, we define what productivity means. Part 2, we figure out our flow and how to match it. Part 3, we list out a series of objections, of hurdles, of possible problems, and we create solutions. And then finally, part 4, we develop our architecture. We do this on a weekly basis. And then our bonus tip of the week is we slowly adjust, even if it's just one piece every single week, we slowly adjust our environment to incentivize the behaviors we want and disincentivize behaviors we don't need. I know that was a lot of information. If you're anything like me, you're super excited because this is something you can do. It's tactical. It's tangible. I can hold this in my hands. I can see how I can use this. It's not theory. Tell me what you think. If you do end up implementing this system, go ahead and email me at the Mendo Money Mindset at gmail.com. I would love to hear your story and how you implement this. And finally, what I want to talk today about is something I find a series of events that have happened in my life that I think have been top of mind. And I think they don't just apply to me, but I can now speak from a first person point of view. I can hopefully sit with you and we can sit together and we can say, yeah, isn't this world a funny thing? So this all kicks off with the story. If you don't know, if you haven't seen me around, I am wearing a medical boot. What is a medical boot? It is like a huge snowboarder boot made for Eskimos. Is it great to have at July when it's super hot and sweaty out? No, can't say it is. Why do I have a medical boot, you might ask? Well, this summer I have committed to myself and to my son. We're working on what we call the Treehouse. It's a 5 foot by 5 foot built house out of 4x4s, plywood, the whole works. It's a legit little house. We have, and this thing's been here for decades, right? Before I ever came to that house, it was there. But with my boy now being 5 going on 6, it's time for us to sand, clean, paint, and we're getting this thing back to a safe and respectable condition. So we rebuilt the stairs that were going to it. We sanded down and painted the sides on the interior. Still have to sand and paint the floor. But on one of these, a wonderful client of mine, we're clearing out her property, getting it ready for the market. She had extra roofing shingles. Those composition gravel roofing shingles you see. And I said, that's it. I'm going to re-roof it. I'm up there. And I got the extendo ladder. You know what I'm talking about? You go clink, 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 clink. Sticks in place and you walk up the ladder. Well, I had about been 4 hours into this. The hot sun is coming down on me. It's 11 o'clock. It's already hot. I'm sweating. I'm almost done with one side of this roof. I get to the top of these stairs. I lean in to put a nail in my mouth and to get that nail and start hammering it on these shingles. And when I lean in, you don't know it, but there's a creek about 6 inches away from the bottom of my ladder. And I leaned in, and that ladder leaned out, and it slipped into the creek. It went in one huge, loud, momentous fall. And guess what? I came along with it. I slid down that roof. The bruises on my arm and the burns from trying to grab onto something as I'm peeling my skin off of the gravel comp shingles. Not fun. But I end up landing on what we later found out was my ankle. And come to find out, I fractured my ankle. Limping around for 2 to 3 days. Just thinking, oh, I'll be fine. And then it started to get swollen, started not to look good. And then I said, oh, I better go get this checked out. So this reminds me that I, as a human being, am fragile. I'm not 12 anymore. I can't just bounce off of the asphalt and keep on going. I am now realizing with some level of humility how fragile I can be. But more importantly, I had to ask people for help. I had to ask someone to drive me. I had to ask someone to borrow a cane. I had to ask the doctors to help me. And I don't know about you, but I kind of get in this moments of pride. I can do everything myself. I can accomplish all these great things. I'm my own independent person. And I forget what a blessing it is to be so humble as to ask for help. It not only gave me a sense of I'm very lucky to have these people in my life, but it also gave these people, my friends, people that had my best interest in mind, the opportunity to show me love through action. And that was helping me. Sometimes when we want to be good friends, we don't ask, hey, how can I help you this week? We ask in return, hey, I really need some help. Can you help me do X, Y, Z? Because then allows our good friends to show us, the proof in the pudding. They're coming out, they're helping us. So I want to finish this with another story that I think you might find. I sat down with a client yesterday. If you're listening to this, you know who you are. Thank you again for having me in your home. And we sat, I believe we talked for 2 hours. Long conversations. And she was an end-of-life care nurse. She cared for the human beings coming end of life, and in those moments helped them to the other side. And we were talking, and I said, you have to tell me, what are some of the insights you found? What are some of the things that spoke to you of all these years doing it? And she said something that was very interesting to me that I really wanted to take away. And I want to pull this up and read it to you. So I asked her what were the common things she heard from her clients as they were getting ready to pass away. And she said, the ones that were grounded in their faith, whatever faith that was, the ones that genuinely believed this was just a temporary pause button in the whole sequence of the movie, they were good. They were happy. They were saying, I'll see you later. The ones that did not have faith, or they weren't grounded in their faith, or they were hoping there was something else on the other side. Some of them, not all of them, started to worry that they had not done enough with their lives. They hadn't said the things to the people they love. They hadn't bonded with the people most important to them. I remember reading a study about a nurse who had interviewed these people coming end of life, and career, trophies, money was not on the list of things they wanted to see or talk about when it came to those last moments. It was family, friends, and experiences. Did I experience everything I wanted to experience? Did I love everyone I wanted to love? And how did those people come out from me being here? And she said something which really spoke to me. She looked up and she started to cry and she smiled. She said, I love my job. She said, I get to bring these people home. I get to bring these people home. What a beautiful way of thinking about it. So as you and I go on with our lives, and we think about the chores, and we think about the dinners, we think about the work and the kids and the schedules and the commitments, let's be reminded that we're fragile, we're temporary, we're not going to be here forever, and that one day we're going to be reflecting on our lives, and the questions we are most likely going to be asking: did I make a difference? Did I love and express everything on who I was? And did I experience the things I wanted to experience? And if you ask yourself those questions today, and if you find there are some gaps between the answers you want and where you're currently at, this is my invitation to you to start filling in some of those gaps. Talk to the people you've been meaning to talk to. Go to the place or experience the thing you've always wanted to but haven't had the guts or the wherewithal to do until now. Right? Pack the kids in the car. Let's go do this together. And then look at the impact you're leaving. Are you being a net benefit to society, to the people around you? If you're listening to this radio show, you probably are, and I love you for that. I'm going to end this right where we started and give you the quote of the day again. The quote is, "We are all just walking each other home," from Ram Dass. It's been a blessing and an honor to hang out with you. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week. And until next time. All people, I took a statistics class back in college. People invariably will align themselves in such a way where you can represent most personalities, demographics, races. Everything tends to show off in a bell curve. So a bell curve looks like a bell. There's one extreme over here with a limited amount of people. There's one extreme over here with a limited amount of people. And as you continue in the middle, that's where the average of most people sit. With that, I have realized the older I get, the more I am okay with not being on the top of that bell curve. And then on either side, one side I avidly repel because I tend to find myself on another side. So that gap tends to be wider between who I associate my identity to and the other side. But all that aside, I'm okay with being weird. I'm okay with being misunderstood. I'm okay with being misinterpreted. I'm okay with not being noticed. All because I find myself not on the top with the majority of the average, but I find myself somewhere along the extreme side. And I find that the people in that group are my people. That's my tribe. That's who I love. That's who I want to be around. And so for my son, as he's growing up, he's going to go to school, be excited. Someone's going to call him weird. He's going to cry for the first time, feeling ostracized. He's going to go home and he's going to say, "Daddy, they called me, fill in the blank. They think I'm weird." And I don't know how to... There's nothing I can say that'll make him feel better. The only thing I think I can approach with is I hold each side of his face, I look him in his blue eyes, and I say, "Handsome, we're meant to be weird. Weird only shows that we're not the average, and I don't want us to be average. It's a gift that we are not average. Embrace it. Because one day someone's going to find you, and that's going to be your tribe."